Assalamualaikum dan salam sejahtera. Anda bersama saya Nabilah Khaleeda dan ini Niaga AWANI. Seperti biasa pada jam ini kita akan berikan laporan berita bisnes kewangan ekonomi dalam dan juga luar negara. Namun kita mulakan dengan perkembangan ini. Risiko hutang luar negara secara keseluruhan mencatatkan kalau kita lihat kekal terkawal disokong oleh profil tempoh matang dan profil mata wang yang baik. Kementerian Kewangan MOF berkata hutang luar negeri berjumlah 1.4 trilion ringgit atau 69.4% daripada keluaran dalam negara kasar KDNK setakat akhir suku ketiga 2025.
Menurut MOF, paras itu dinilai selamat dan tidak memudaratkan prospek ekonomi negara. Berdasarkan Debt Sustainability Framework oleh Tabung Kewangan Antarabangsa IMF, risiko hutang luar negeri boleh memudaratkan sekiranya disertai dengan saiz hutang jangka pendek yang besar, pendedahan yang tinggi terhadap pinjaman dalam mata wang asing serta defisit dalam akaun semasa imbangan pembayaran. Dalam jawapan bertulis ke Dewan Rakyat, MOF berkata risiko ini tidak wujud dalam konteks Malaysia. Dari segi tempoh matang hutang, sebanyak 56.9% hutang luar negeri setakat akhir suku ketiga 2025 terdiri daripada hutang jangka sederhana dan panjang, justru mengurangkan risiko pembiayaan semula. Kementerian itu menjawab soalan Ahli Parlimen Larut Datuk Seri Hamzah Zainuddin mengenai langkah konkret yang diambil kerajaan bagi memastikan kemampuan negara menghadapi hutang luar memandangkan Rizab Antarabangsa Bank Negara Malaysia BNM sehingga Ogos 2025 hanya berupaya menampung 4.8 bulan keperluan import dan 0.9 kali hutang luar jangka pendek. Mengulas lanjut, menurut MOF, setakat 31 Oktober 2025, Rizab Antarabangsa BNM berjumlah 123.8 bilion dolar Amerika bersamaan dengan 521.6 bilion ringgit dan paras Rizab ini adalah melebihi paras ambang kecukupan minimum antarabangsa sebanyak 3 bulan dan 0.9 kali jumlah hutang luar negeri jangka pendek, kata kementerian itu. Rizab antarabangsa juga kekal mencukupi pada 104% mengikut metrik penilaian kecukupan Rizab oleh IMF yang mengambil kira pelbagai sudut kecukupan Rizab secara lebih menyeluruh.
Kira-kira 1.2 juta pertubuhan di seluruh Malaysia bakal terlibat dalam Banci Ekonomi 2026 atau BE2026. Jabatan Perangkat Malaysia Dawson berkata, berdasarkan jumlah itu, sebanyak 180,000 daripada pertubuhan perniagaan berdaftar itu terdapat di wilayah persekutuan, iaitu pertambahan pertubuhan sebanyak 19.5% berbanding Banci Ekonomi 2023.
Katanya, berdasarkan bilangan ini, pertumbuhan di wilayah persekutuan dianggarkan dengan pecahan kepada mikro sebanyak 58.7%, kecil 35.0%, sederhana 1.6% dan besar 4.7%. Menurut Dozam, kedudukan wilayah persekutuan Kuala Lumpur sebagai penyumbang kedua tertinggi kepada keluaran dalam negara kasar KDNK Malaysia selepas Selangor pada 2024 dengan sumbangan 16.1% kepada nilai KDNK berjumlah 265.8 bilion ringgit iaitu meningkat sebanyak 6.2%. Sektor perkhidmatan yang mengungguli ekonomi berkembang 5.5% mengatasi pertumbuhan nasional 5.3%. Pertumbuhan ini disokong oleh subsektor perdagangan borong runcit, makanan, minuman dan penginapan serta subsektor kewangan, insurans, hartanah, perkhidmatan, perniagaan. Sementara itu, sektor pembinaan dan sektor pembuatan masing-masing meningkat 21.1% dan 4.3%. Ketua Perangkawan Malaysia Datuk Seri Dr. Muhammad Uzir Mahidin menyeru agar semua pihak bersama-sama menjadikan pelaksanaan banci itu sebagai satu tanggungjawab nasional dalam usaha mengukuhkan daya saing negara, memacu inovasi dan menjamin kemakmuran ekonomi Malaysia yang mampan, inklusif serta berdaya tahan. Bertemakan data nadi ekonomi rakyat, BE 2026 akan dilaksanakan di seluruh negara bermula Februari hingga Oktober 2026 melibatkan semua pertubuhan perniagaan dan pertubuhan bukan berasaskan keuntungan di Malaysia termasuk semua sektor ekonomi iaitu pertanian, pembuatan, pembinaan, pelumbungan, pengkuarian dan perkhidmatan.
All right, Malaysia losses an estimated 5 to 6 billion ringgit annually to procurement leakages and weak financial controls, according to Auditor General reports. At the same time, global AI adoption in auditing is accelerating. PwC predicts AI-driven risk analytics could cut fraud losses by up to 40% within 5 years. Malaysia has launched frameworks like AI Governance for Education Age and also Malaysia National AI Office (NAIO), but real-world deployment remains limited. Meanwhile, South Africa is emerging as a hub for AI innovation in compliance and predictive risk. So to unpack on this matter today, we have with us in the studio Claude Chatty, the CEO and also founder of IAT, the world developer of the world's first predictive risk AI. How are you? Good morning.
Good morning, and thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for coming all the way here, being in the studio this morning. But to start, we want to compare on the AI landscape between Malaysia and also South Africa. We see that Malaysia has a strong policy frameworks, but very lack on the deployment. So while South Africa, we see that they're gaining, very large when it comes to traction, when it comes to predictive risk AI. So how could you compare the two ecosystems between Malaysia and also South Africa, and where do you see the biggest gaps right now?
Yep. Thank you so much. So my fundamental belief is that there's big parties out there that are busy developing the infrastructure for AI usage and adoption. The one key differentiator that I've noticed in my travels thus far is that from a Malaysia perspective, I think that we're still having very much the infrastructure and governance conversations, which are extremely important. But the adoption conversation is the one that needs to be on the table. So as part of my my trip and my meeting with various stakeholders, including people from government as well as educational institutions, my message has been very clear. I believe that the tracks have been built. Let's ride it. And from a South African perspective, I think we've been quick to get onto that track, onto that highway. And Malaysia has definitely got the capability and the skills. Now we just need to adopt faster. So adoption has been a bit of a challenge from what I've seen.
And before we start this conversation, we had this, you mentioned about the Audrey, the first world AI leader by IAT itself. So can you talk more about that, and your company specifically focuses on the predictive risk AI. So what makes it different from the traditional risk analytics? And at the same time, how do you help Malaysia strengthen governance and also reduce financial leakage at the same time in governance?
Fantastic. So firstly, I'm not an auditor by profession, but I've interacted with auditors, and I have lots of friends and family that have been auditors. But being in business, the one bugbear for me and has been that auditing has always been something reactive. You get an audit report after maybe some time after financial year end, and you're expected to mitigate issues based on that report. So what fundamentally changes with Audrey and AI? We do reporting, analysis, and predictive risk assessments in the now. For now, so that we can deal with issues proactively. So when you speak about revenue leakage, 5 to 6 billion ringgits, we've had the privilege of dealing with the Ministry of Finance and other institutions, and we've shown them how through proactive risk assessments, we can pick up risks as and when they occur. So that enables government organizations to deal with these matters as and when they occur, rather than report on them as a loss. So I think that's a big fundamental change. The other big change is, with the advent of new technologies such as AI, machine learning, this enables you to use large data sets to inform better decision making. The audit profession, once again, has had this set of rules and methodologies that's probably been around for like 50 years. But guess what? The world has changed fundamentally in the last 50 years. We can do so much more. So what we've done is we've said, okay, instead of using sample data, which is what auditors use, they use sets of sample data as part of their fieldwork and testing to test against the mitigations and the risks. What happens if we use technology to look at all the data available? Not only will we be able to be more accurate, but also we will probably, with technology, we can get things done that much faster. So the two big things that Audrey does is, one, it makes sure that you look at your books and your risk continuously for insight, and also predictively for foresight. So you can see things potentially before they can happen. And the second thing is we look at all the available data. So we're not being Big Brother or the police, but what we're trying to do is build a more transparent and more productive organization and world that we live in. Yeah.
But before we go deep further on the mitigation strategies, what are the stats and data based on reports on the procurement leakages and also weak financial controls that you see based on the reports?
Look, I mean, we've obviously done this under strict guidance and conditions. But what I can tell you is I can speak about themes. So some of the themes that we've picked up and shared with the ministry revolves around how we could do things faster, how we can leverage our Malaysian people more as part of our supply chain. And of course, how we can ensure that there's better productivity, meaning every ringgit spent is a ringgit well spent, and ideally better spent within the country. So those were three big things that I think that I can call out specifically on the show without being hurled before the coals.
But we see that recent Prime Minister Anwar's visit to Africa, which signals deeper tech and also trade ties. So in your opinion, what immediate opportunities that you see for Malaysia and also South Africa AI partnerships arising from this diplomatic momentum? Could this diplomatic momentum lead to a Malaysia-Africa AI corridor, and especially when Malaysia has an ambitious national goal of becoming AI nation by 2030 and also a regional AI hub in Southeast Asia?
So firstly, I think I can speak on behalf of all my countrymen in that we've got a deep and decorated history with the Malaysian people. As a South African, we're very proud of the ties we have with Malaysia. I learned that our first ballot papers were printed in Malaysia. That's post-apartheid. So and our policies have been modeled on many of Malaysia's successful policies. From an AI perspective, and specifically with Audrey, our Audit Negara or Auditor General and the Malaysian Auditor General, I think through this process, having dealt with both, we're able to connect both. But more so, from a technology and knowledge transfer perspective, we signed a collaborative agreement with MITE, your government agency, earlier this year. And part of that entails a skills transfer and knowledge transfer. Not only that, we're going to the National AI Organization a bit later today to also confirm our commitment to train Malaysian people. In fact, we're taking our first 2 students along to the NAIO to show them that, well, this is more than just a product push. This is a partnership push where we've been able to harness and make use of the available technologies. We have not built the infrastructure, as I mentioned. We are driving on that highway at breakneck speed. And I think we want to take our Malaysian people and young Malaysians on that path with us. And so this is the start of that journey. Yeah.
Since you've highlighted on the talent development, what concrete steps that would you take to actually build Malaysia AI capability rather than just exporting technology? Exactly.
So, I mean, it's a multi-pronged approach. So, firstly, with the partnership with MITE, our agreement at a very high level is absolutely predicated upon setting up offices here and setting up a skills development center of sorts. So we're meeting with MITE tomorrow to firm that relationship up. So we're busy setting that up. So that means that for now, yes, we're going to have our South African AI engineers in country for the shortest time, but through our partnership agreement also with a Malaysian company called PCG, we're doing a train-the-trainer exercise. So they're going to be helping us train future AI engineers and future technologists to drive this. You see, my mantra, and yesterday we were privileged to be at the Serum International Conference, and my mantra to everybody was around, look, let us not get too immersed in the architecture of the technology, but let's rather immerse ourselves on how this technology can be used now for good, for sustainability, and to increase productivity. There's people that are naysayers around AI. Is AI going to take over our jobs? Is it going to be the age of the machines? But what I honestly believe is that it is the age of the human and machine collaboration, and the AI that we are using now, well, it's generative AI, and we're moving to agentic and hopefully multi-agentic AI, which I could talk to you about for a very long time. But that's all about elevating us as human beings. It's about elevating a professional to augment what you do and make sure that it makes you a better human and a better professional specifically. So it's about accelerating that to our youth and making sure that let us not get too involved in the back end stuff. Let's see how we can use this now for business, for education, for healthcare, and for our economy. Yeah.
But that's the thing about AI. The dynamic of AI landscape is super complex, if I must say.
Yes.
So when it comes to AI compliance and also auditing, each involves a very super high stakes. So how do you ensure principles like perhaps human oversight, also fairness and transparency that is embedded in your solutions, perhaps in
Yes.
Audrey?
I mean, look, fundamentally, we're an audit platform. So by nature, the designers and the back end have been designed by auditors. So governance is extremely important. Now, whilst I think kind of standards authorities and the governments are regulating, what's very important, I believe, is self-regulation. So with AI, you build guardrails around what AI can't do. But also, I think it's important to adhere to national and international laws about where to draw the line. So as auditors, what we do is that we also have built-in structures within our AI. For example, traceability audits. So there's something that's called AI hallucination. So as you, we were speaking to people yesterday, for example, if you use 5 different AI and GPT platforms, for example, they may give you 5 different responses.
Right.
But where Audrey comes in play is that our traceability audits will tell you if someone said A, B, and C about Nabilah or Claude, we can trace that. We can trace that to the source because I think ultimately, and this is where I'm a very strong proponent, AI does not replace the human being. The AI augments the human being. The human being still needs to be empowered to make the final decision, as is the AI auditor. It is not an auditor, it's an audit and assurance assistant. An auditor still needs to sign it off. An auditor still needs to verify that. And I think this is the happy place when I speak about human and machine collaboration, is that the human being still holds the strategic insight. We are the real intelligence. And the artificial intelligence, we allow that to do the heavy lifting, the hard work, so that we can do the smart work, which is the thinking, the decision-making, the verification, and to clear all the blurry spots.
So Audrey is accessible to everyone?
Obviously, it's a subscription-based model, but it is accessible to everyone. So the way we've built it is that I've been a strong proponent of the underdog. This is how this was built. And it was built on a dream that currently there are a few big consulting and audit houses. I think we know the big 4, the big 5. And the dream started with was, what if we made a 10-man or a 5-man audit shop behave like a 100-man audit shop and be able to execute like a 100-man audit shop, to play with the big boys and to compete with the big boys? And how could we use technology to do that? And so through this iterative kind of process, we realized, hang on, technology can help us. So it can help a small business, a micro business, all the way to a multinational business, depending on the application and depending on the needs. So very cool. One very other cool thing, and this is not just with Audrey, with other technologies as well, is the rise of agentic AI, where, for example, we are now able to, if you're a subject matter expert, we give you a persona, or some other people call it a co-pilot. That co-pilot, once you open your system and start interacting, it actually starts learning how you do things. So that one day, if you may change jobs, if you decide to retire, or for whatever reason, the AI co-pilot or agent continues to work. So that's just the power of technology. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Claude. There was the insights from Claude where it comes to AI deployment, because it's not just about it's a governance tool that can actually save billions and also restore public trust and create new economic bridges between regions. And today's conversation shows that how important AI is when it comes to avoiding leakages in procurement. So thank you again, Claude and Sarah, Claude, for sharing your insights, and we look forward to seeing these ideas translate into real-world impact, perhaps in the future. But for now, we have to go for a short break. We'll be right back.
Thank you.
Di dalam setiap berita yang dibawa, konteks amat penting. Cara kita mendapat berita kian berubah. Melalui media sosial maupun saluran digital yang lain serta kaca TV. Kami sentiasa membawakan yang tergempar dan terkini.
Kita buat sesuatu yang berbeza.
Teraskan acuan verifikasi yang diamalkan supaya setiap fakta adalah sahih. Daripada analisis pelbagai sudut yang mendalam, laporan-laporan khas dan perbincangan yang membina negara. Inklusif, suara rakyat kami ajukan. Keseimbangan persepsi kami pastikan. Kerana setiap cerita mempunyai impak yang tersendiri dan perlu dibawa dengan penelitian yang terperinci. Pastikan Astro AWANI menjadi pilihan anda tidak kira di mana sahaja anda berada. Saluran berita paling dipercayai di Malaysia.
Bertemu kembali kita berdepan pilihan raya negeri Sabah dalam suasana cabaran ekonomi dan masa depan anak muda yang semakin kompleks. Hari ini kita nak fahami sejauh mana inisiatif di bawah Yayasan Peneraju mampu membina ekosistem bakat muda Sabah bukan saja untuk pekerjaan hari ini tetapi juga masa depan negeri. Jadi untuk kita berbincang lanjut, kita terus bersama dengan Ibrahim Sani, Ketua Program Eksekutif Yayasan Peneraju. How are you, Ibrahim?
Alhamdulillah, baik, bagus dan juga teruja untuk diskus dan bincang tentang
anak muda Sabah.
Ya, betul. Jadi berkenaan dengan apa yang diperlukan oleh tenaga kerja Sabah adalah dalam dua bidang yang penting. Pertama adalah dalam bidang teknologi, kedua adalah dalam bidang sektor perniagaan ataupun perkhidmatan perniagaan, business services. Baru-baru ini Yayasan Peneraju yang merupakan sebuah agensi di bawah Kementerian Ekonomi telah pun menjalani beberapa roadshow di Sabah, lebih daripada 21 kota besar dan kecil untuk menentukan jenis-jenis latihan yang akan dibagi kepada rakyat muda Sabah. Dan ternyata ramai yang minta tentang cyber security, AI. Baru tadi kita pun dengar perbincangan tentang kecerdasan buatan. Dan juga yang salah satu penting lagi adalah data analytics dan juga data science. Ini adalah untuk bidang teknologi. Manakala untuk bidang perniagaan adalah accounting dan juga CFA, Chartered Financial Analyst. Ini kerana banyak pelaburan yang akan dilaksanakan di Sabah memerlukan skill set dan juga satu kemahiran yang penting untuk dalam bidang pelaburan. Seperti mana kita tahu, perbincangan di antara Niaga AWANI dan juga beberapa agensi negeri di Sabah seperti Sabah Invest, seperti Kerajaan Negeri Sabah dalam sektor perniagaan memerlukan pelaburan yang sangat penting, dan orang-orang yang ada ataupun tenaga pekerja yang ada certification seperti CFA, Chartered Financial Analyst, boleh membantu dalam mempertingkatkan dan memperlipat gandakan pelaburan yang dilakukan di Sabah. So ini adalah antara flavor ataupun cita rasa yang diperlukan di Sabah pada hari ini.
Macam sekarang YP pun baru saja habis satu program iaitu Bah Upgrade Kita Bersama YP pada sepanjang Oktober. Mungkin boleh jelaskan sikit macam mana concrete metrics that you see yang boleh mengukur keberkesanan program ini, dan mungkin apa pendapat yang you wanna do in the next program?
Okay, so Bah Upgrade tu merupakan salah satu usaha yang dilaksanakan oleh Yayasan Peneraju untuk nombor satu, memperkenalkan tawaran perkhidmatan Yayasan Peneraju kepada bakat-bakat di Sabah. Kedua adalah untuk mengenal pasti jenis-jenis kehendak dan keperluan di negeri Sabah, dan juga apa yang dipinginkan, yang diinginkan oleh bakat-bakat di Sabah. So melalui matlamat kita dua ini, kita juga ingin melihat landscape di Sabah. Sebab dari segi penyertaan pembangunan bakat di Sabah, Sabah merupakan negeri yang paling rendah dari segi mereka yang memohon untuk mendapatkan latihan pendidikan dari Yayasan Penaju dan juga dari agensi-agensi lain seperti MARA, UiTM dan sewaktu dengannya. Oleh itu, disebabkan lower base ini, apa sahaja number yang kita dapat dari segi enrolment ataupun penyertaan adalah bagus. Tetapi itu bukan hasrat kita. Kita ingin melihat kehendak dan keperluan negeri oleh bakat-bakat Sabah. So, melalui cara ini, kita telah pun pergi ke 21 kota, termasuk kota-kota kecil seperti di Kunak, di Pensiangan, di Sipitang, dan juga kota-kota yang sederhana besar seperti di Lahad Datu, Semporna, dan juga Keningau, dan Ranau, Kundasang, dan juga kota-kota besar seperti Kota Kinabalu dan juga Satellite City-nya Putatan. Dan melalui negeri kota-kota ini, kita pun telah melihat bahawa apa yang diperlukan oleh satu kota dengan satu kota sebenarnya sama, iaitu mereka memerlukan latihan infrastruktur dan juga latihan yang boleh mengembangkan dan menskalakan perniagaan mereka. Mereka juga memerlukan khidmat latihan untuk meningkatkan rangkaian network dan juga jaringan perniagaan. Dan itu sedang dilaksanakan oleh agensi yang sekutu dengan Yayasan Penaju, iaitu Teraju, yang juga terletak di bawah Kementerian Ekonomi. So, melalui usaha ganding di antara Yayasan Penaju dan Teraju, melalui program BAH Upgrade yang telah pun berjaya dilaksanakan, kita boleh menjawab soalan Nabilah secara direct. Sebelum ini, angka penyertaan Sabah untuk bakat Sabah untuk tahun 2025 sebelum BAH Upgrade adalah 400 orang. Nah, berbanding dengan Selangor, contohnya 10,000 orang, 400 sangat sedikit. Dan 400 ini pula adalah kursus-kursus pendek, jangka pendek, di antara 5 hari ke 14 hari. Melalui BAH Upgrade, kita telah enroll lebih daripada 1,200 peserta. Dan daripada 1,200 peserta ini, lebih daripada 150 orang telah pun memohon untuk mendapatkan latihan pembiayaan dari Yayasan Penaju untuk kursus-kursus yang mahal dan juga panjang, jangka masa panjang, seperti ACCA, ICAEW, dan juga Data Analytics dan juga AI. So, ternyata matriks yang kita letakkan itu, walaupun nampak pada hakikinya sedikit, iaitu 150 orang memohon ataupun 1,200 orang yang menyerta BAH Upgrade, tetapi jika dibandingkan dengan figure asal, iaitu 400 orang secara tahunan, 10 bulan 400, dalam jangka masa 2 minggu, melalui program BAH Upgrade, kita telah pun naik ataupun melipat gandakan sebanyak 25% penyertaan dari bakat Sabah. Ini adalah masih kecil dari segi angka yang kita inginkan daripada bakat Sabah, tetapi we're off to a good start, senang kata.
How do you compare to Sabah when it comes to, sebab kita punya ekosistem pekerjaan berbeza. So kita nak capai dari segi menyesuaikan modul latihan yang ada sekarang ni dengan pekerjaan yang ada when it comes to digital skills dengan kemahiran vocational, so dia relevan dengan peluang pekerjaan tempatan. So how are you YP?
So dia sekarang ni bila kita tengok jenis-jenis pekerjaan yang ada dan juga jenis-jenis latihan yang perlu dibagi untuk memenuhi kehendak industri. Ini merupakan satu chicken and egg argument yang sebenarnya di Kementerian Ekonomi mahupun di Yayasan Penaju, kita sebenarnya tidak ingin even acknowledge ataupun address. Sebab kalau kita tengok dari segi kitaran bakat dan juga industri, sekiranya kita ingin memenuhi kehendak industri sepanjang zaman, maka Yayasan Penaju merupakan salah satu agensi yang bukan melatih bakat-bakat, tetapi sebuah agensi yang menyediakan bakat-bakat untuk industri. Ini bukan matlamat kita. Matlamat kita yang sebenar adalah untuk menjadikan bakat-bakat Sabah terutamanya sebagai sebuah pencipta nilai dan bukan hanya penambah nilai ataupun value add. So kita nak create value creator ataupun pencipta nilai. Melalui falsafah ini, kita telah menetapkan bahawa apakah yang diperlukan oleh Sabah, bukannya industri di Sabah dalam jangka masa dekat dan juga sederhana. Jika kita menjawab soalan ini, maka kita sedar bahawa apa yang diperlukan Sabah adalah kemahiran dalam dua bidang yang saya sebutkan tadi, teknologi dan juga perkhidmatan perniagaan, business services. Ini kerana di Semenanjung banyak industri yang telah bukan sahaja wujud tetapi matang. Tetapi pelbagai industri-industri yang wujud di dalam Semenanjung ini belum lagi dapat ditubuhkan secara berskala di Sabah. Dan ini adalah kerana antara sebabnya ketiadaan bakat. So kalau kita tengok industri di Sabah sedia ada dan kita perlukan sediakan bakat-bakat latihan di Sabah sedia ada, maka kita tidak menyediakan bakat-bakat Sabah ini untuk menjadi pencipta nilai untuk industri-industri yang mendatang. So dari segi situ baru kita sedar bahawa kalau kita hendak membangunkan Sabah secara menyeluruh, antara penyediaan bakat-bakat yang diperlukan adalah bukan sahaja untuk menyediakan kehendak industri di Sabah pada hari ini, tetapi apa yang diperlukan oleh industri di Sabah untuk masa mendatang. Seperti kecerdasan buatan dari segi AI unaware ataupun tidak sedar yang AI itu wujud kepada AI aware untuk sedar bahawa AI itu ada. Dan kalau kita tengok kerangka dan juga framework AI yang telah pun tersedia ataupun disediakan oleh pejabat kecerdasan buatan negara ataupun kebangsaan, National AI Office, mereka ada 4 kerangka: AI unaware, AI aware, AI ready and AI expert. Untuk di Semenanjung, kita perlu sediakan bakat di antara AI aware and AI ready dan menjadikan mereka kepada AI expert. Tapi di Sabah, kita harus angkat mereka daripada AI unaware untuk menjadi AI aware. So itu adalah antara perkara yang kita sedang laksanakan.
Banyaklah Ibrahim kongsikan kenapa pentingnya di mana pembangunan bakat ni, sebab ini selari juga dengan PRN Sabah yang berlaku sekarang ni, hangat ke...
Betulan kita cerita pasal Sabah padahal
manifesto sekarang tengah berlaku. Jadi kalau kita nak saksikan kesinambungan sokongan untuk bakat muda Sabah ni, mungkin dari segi kalau kita lihat peluang latihan, internship juga pendanaan, macam mana kita nak pastikan ia tidak terjejas dengan kitaran politik ataupun yang berlaku kehangatan manifesto pada waktu ini terhadap pembangunan bakat Sabah?
So dari segi pembangunan bakat Sabah, kita kena lihat dari segi pembangunan bakat Sabah untuk anak-anak muda dan juga pembangunan bakat Sabah secara menyeluruh, bermaksud bukan sahaja termaktub untuk bakat-bakat muda, mereka yang berumur 30-an, 40-an dan 50-an. Antara perkara yang paling penting untuk kita atasi adalah kalau kita terus sediakan bakat-bakat Sabah dalam sektor small and medium size enterprises, maka itulah dia industri Sabah yang akan mendatang ini. Mereka akan tetap kekal di bawah lower scale economic cycle, seperti food and beverage, services dan sebagainya. Kalau kita ingin meningkatkan tahap ekonomi Sabah kepada satu paras yang paling tidak pun setaraf dengan Semenanjung, dan kalau lebih baik lagi tinggi daripada Semenanjung, maka kita harus lihat peningkatan bakat untuk mereka menjadi sebuah usahawan dan juga mereka yang boleh menjadi entrepreneur dalam high-end industries seperti semicon industry developer, seperti chartered accountancy firms, seperti chartered financial analyst firms dan sebagainya, or investment firms. Kalau kita ingin mengurangkan jurang di antara apa yang ada dan apa yang kita inginkan, maka ini adalah satu langkah yang penting untuk dilaksanakan, tidak kira sama ada wujud dalam senario politik ataupun PRN dan sebagainya. Kalau kita tengok yang akan datang, PRN yang akan datang seperti di Melaka, di Sarawak dan juga di Johor, usaha yang akan dipertingkatkan di dalam 3 negeri ini tidak akan begitu agresif seperti mana kita akan dan sedang laksanakan di Sabah. Sebab agensi persekutuan seperti Yayasan Peraju tidak melihat election ataupun pilihan raya sebagai sebuah pemangkin untuk melaksanakan program-program yang diperlukan oleh rakyat. Antara sebab kita melipat gandakan usaha kita di Sabah seperti program Bah Upgrade dan sewaktu dengannya adalah kerana itu diperlukan oleh rakyat Sabah dan ekonomi Sabah, tidak kira sama ada election ada atau tidak.
Kita want to touch on brain drain juga, sebab kalau kita lihat ada segelintir yang menganggap kalau mereka yang telah berhijrah ke semenanjung itu satu kegagalan, but at the same time on the other side kata mungkin itu ada juga peluang yang lebih baik untuk bakat Bumi Putra. What do you think about that, and how is YP mitigating this issue of brain drain?
Okay, pertama sekali again another psychological mind shift yang kita kena atasi. Jika ada wujud migrasi bakat-bakat dari tempat mereka datang ataupun tempat asal mereka kepada tempat yang lain, itu sebenarnya tidak ada masalah. Kalau kita fikirkan, ialah Nabilah berhijrah daripada Shah Alam ke Bukit Jalil. Tak jauh hijrah itu. Tapi saya hijrah daripada Johor Bahru ke Bukit Jalil. Okey, itu adalah satu migrasi sebenarnya. So, kalau kita nak argue brain drain, sebenarnya Johor Bahru is deprived of one talent, which is me. Because saya bergerak ke Kuala Lumpur. Tetapi itu tidak berlaku. Mengapa kalau warga bakat dari Semenanjung berhijrah dari ke mana-mana mereka berada kepada negeri-negeri kota-kota besar seperti di Kuala Lumpur, Penang maupun Johor Bahru, itu tidak dianggap sebagai brain drain. Ini adalah kerana ekonomi yang dipacukan oleh industri di Kuala Lumpur sedang diperlihatkan dan juga dibangunkan secara bersama di daerah-daerah lain dan juga di negeri-negeri lain. Sama juga prinsipnya jika kita lihat migrasi bakat Sabah keluar negeri ke Semenanjung, itu tidak diperlihatkan sebagai satu deprivation of talents dari Sabah, kerana Sabah seperti Kelantan adalah sebuah negeri remittance ataupun negeri yang menerima pendapatan dari luar. So ini adalah satu usaha untuk yang kita boleh lihat Sabah dapat membangun, iaitu bakat-bakat Sabah yang kerja di luar Sabah, sama ada di Semenanjung atau di Sarawak ataupun di luar negara, mereka akan bagi dan menghulurkan duit kembali kepada keluarga-keluarga mereka di Sabah. Dari segi pembangunan ekonomi, itu tidak menjadi satu masalah. Kedua, walaupun itu adalah satu usaha yang masih lagi sedang berlaku, kalau kita ingin bangunkan Sabah secara pesat, kita perlukan kemahiran yang perlu wujud di tempat lain. So mereka akan pulang insya-Allah, seperti mana kita lihat pada peredaran zaman 70-an, 80-an, ramai bakat-bakat Malaysia berada di luar negara dan pulang ke tanah air dan membangunkan industri-industri melalui pengalaman yang telah pun mereka dapat dipelajari oleh mereka di tempat-tempat lain, di tempat-tempat luar negara. The same thing can be applied di Sabah. Apabila bakat Sabah keluar daripada negeri Sabah dan mendapatkan kemahiran yang diperlukan dari tempat-tempat lain, maka mereka one day insya-Allah, jika industri ada wujud, bakat-bakat tempatan ada dan sebagainya, pelaburan datang, mereka dapat pulang ke Sabah dan juga membangunkan industri Sabah secara menyeluruh menggunakan pengalaman yang mereka telah dapat dari tempat lain. So it's actually quite impossible kalau kita ingin bangunkan sebuah industri di Sabah yang wujud di tempat lain jika mereka tidak dapatkan pengalaman sewajarnya. So dari segi Kementerian Ekonomi, kita tidak melihat bakat Sabah keluar daripada negeri itu untuk mendapatkan pengalaman sebagai satu kehilangan yang nyata dari segi ekonomi. It's not an economic loss. It's actually an economic gain. Sekiranya mereka pulang dan juga membangunkan industri melalui pengalaman mereka. Sebab antara yang kita ingin khawatir bukan adalah mereka keluar negeri, tetapi lebih kepada apakah tawaran yang kita boleh bagi kepada mereka untuk pulang ke Sabah. What is the value proposition yang kita boleh wujudkan untuk mereka kembali kepada Sabah, kembali kepada negeri mereka dan bangunkan industri-industri yang baru yang belum lagi wujud di Sabah yang diperlukan oleh negeri itu sekarang ini.
Okay, Ibrahim, quick one, perhaps you can say mungkin kenapa pentingnya kita nak program YP adakan ni adalah untuk pembangunan bakat, dan sebenarnya pembangunan bakat-bakat muda ni sama ada tidak dipinggirkan. Silakan.
So jadi untuk di Yayasan Penraju, sebenarnya untuk mendapatkan permohonan kewangan, latihan dan juga pembelajaran adalah sangat mudah. Terus ke peneraju.org dan buat aplikasi dari situ, dan dari segi kelulusan setakat ini, terutamanya jika permohonan itu adalah dari warga Sabah, insya-Allah kita akan memberikan kelonggaran yang tinggi untuk membenarkan bakat terutamanya dari Sabah untuk mendapatkan latihan yang sewajarnya. Antara latihan yang diperlukan adalah latihan di dalam sektor perniagaan seperti accounting dan juga chartered financial analyst, dan juga latihan di sektor teknologi seperti AI, prompting, prompt engineering, data science, data analytics dan juga cyber security. Kesemua ini boleh dipohon dari peneraju.org dan boleh mendapat kelulusan sehingga RM150,000. Dan pendanaan ini akan diberikan secara menerus kepada bakat yang memohon dan mereka menggunakan dana ini untuk membayar institusi latihan yang mereka pilih.
Baik, terima kasih diucapkan kepada Ketua Pegawai Eksekutif Yayasan Peneraju Ibrahim Sani. Kita akan berhenti lihat seketika, namun sebelum itu kita akan lihat terlebih dahulu muzik video semboyan berlagu sempena pilihan raya negeri Sabah.
Dengar seruan waris Kinabalu bergema, rentas selah jiwa kental membara, pulang terbakar lukis takdir kita aksara dipangkah jadi cahaya harapan bersama.
Seruan bergema, takdir dilakar. Warta sejati jadi kompas. Dari jantung Kinabalu, kami bawa nadi pilihan raya agar undi dicatat berbekalkan kefahaman.
Magic bukan sekadar trik, tetapi ianya di dalam ruang di antara apa yang mereka lihat dan apa yang kita ingin percaya. Night Spark, pencuri yang paling hebat dan paling tersembunyi di Malaysia. Aku ada plan. Aku perlukan korang bertiga untuk curi hati Kesuma.
Ya.
Apa? I am the Great Adin.
Magic Rompa. Sewa dan stream on demand atau sila ke saluran 480.
Welcome back to Niaga AWANI. Bitcoin's roller coaster in Q4 has stunned even seasoned investors. After smashing through $126,200 in October, the world's largest cryptocurrency plunged to below $90,000 within weeks, erasing billions in market value. And this 25% swing comes amid a backdrop of liquidity, macro uncertainty, and shifting investor sentiment, raising urgent questions. Is this a healthy correction in a maturing market or a red flag signaling deeper volatility ahead. So to help us break this all down, we're joined by someone who watches data very closely, the General Manager APAC at Luno Malaysia, Aaron Tang. Aaron Tang, good morning. We see that Bitcoin hit a record high, 126 to 100 US dollars in October, and then it fell sharply, dipping below 90,000. So this was a major move in a short period. So from your read on the data, what actually triggered this sharp reversal? Was this purely a market that overheated too fast, or were there deeper structural issues that led to the sudden slide?
For having me. So I think the couple of factors that may have contributed to this drop. So number one, there was a liquidity freeze from the recent US government shutdown. Number two, perhaps there are also some rate cut expectations that may not be as confident as they were before because due to inflation. So previously people were expecting a rate cut, but I think people are not so confident anymore. In addition to that, there are, I think, signals of a weakening labor market as well. So heightened overall economic uncertainty. There's also a couple of crypto-specific pressures. So I think the previous few ones, I mentioned a bit more macro factors, but I think there are a couple of crypto-specific pressures amplifying the reversal, such as significant outflows from Bitcoin ETFs. So Bitcoin ETFs, passive investments tracking the market due to the economic uncertainty, a lot of sell-off. So they are also witnessing significant outflows. And I think besides that, perhaps more importantly, large-scale leverage-driven liquidations by sophisticated traders and investors in the space. So basically seeing that the market was, I think there was levels of leverage that were perhaps not that sustainable. So I think in summary, there's both the macroeconomic factors, there's also some crypto-specific pressures. And yeah, I think some analysts view this as a temporary correction. Some people are still quite confident in the overall cycle, but I guess we'll get more into that.
So you just laid out all the triggering factors when it comes to this sharp reversal. But when we zoom into the mechanics of the drop, how much of the drop is large-scale liquidation versus actual macro pressure? And are we talking about a correction caused mainly by leverage washing out the system, or did global headlines like US-China tariff sanctions and US political uncertainty meaningfully add to the downside, Aaron?
Yeah, so in terms of liquidation versus actual macro, let's just frame it. So in October 2025, we peaked around 126,000. The price has dropped about 30%. So it bottomed out, I think, yesterday about $90,000. I think it was more amplified by the large-scale liquidations. So perhaps it was triggered by the macroeconomic pressures, first and foremost, but then it was amplified by the large-scale liquidation. So I think specifically on October 10th, we saw a lot of several platforms, especially offshore platforms, that came under a lot of pressure, and a lot of traders, sophisticated traders, were liquidated in that event. I think that being said, there are longer term, better macro news still on the horizon. So for example, there's expectations of more or quantitative easing starting to happen again. That's number one. There remain persistent concerns around currency devaluation, I think, in multiple countries around the world, multiple economies around the world. And of course, who can forget about rising debt and fiscal deficits? So there is expectations that flows will continue to move into alternative assets such as digital assets, gold, silver, and so on. So I think it's quite an interesting one that yeah, we've had this sharp little drop here, but if you look into previous cycles, like 4-year cycles where Bitcoin moved tremendously, it is actually not very uncommon to see drops of 30% or more.
And this brings us to the bigger question about market structure, because on one hand, we're seeing more institutional investors, more regulated products, even spot ETFs providing a stronger foundation. But on the other hand, episodes like this make it look as if speculative leverage still dominates short-term price discovery. So based on this recent volatility, are we looking at a maturing crypto market, or does this show that crypto remains highly speculative at its core?
Definitely the market is maturing. Yeah, because if you look back again, not this cycle, but look back 4 years, 8 years ago, you'll see that the drops were actually much more pronounced. So we've seen this 30% drop, for example, but 4 years ago, you might see a 40, 50% drop, even as the overall market was still booming in an overall bull trend. Looking back, we can see that. But in that moment, it felt much worse. For example, that the coin was dropping 40%, 50%. So I think, the market is maturing, but of course, it is not as mature as some of our more established assets. For example, if you compare this to, say, an established stock market, for example, we're not going to have that level of stability yet, given that digital assets such a nascent asset class. And I think one angle to view the liquidation in perspective is perhaps it can be seen as a healthy reset. If too much leverage is in the system, too many people are basically buying or trading on debt and speculation, then perhaps it is a healthier reset to flush some of this excess leverage out of the system, and hopefully we hope for the bull run to continue.
Aaron, what are you observing among Malaysian investors and traders? Is the mood one of a fear and pulling back, or are people trading this as another buying the deep opportunity? Because interestingly, in this cycle, Malaysians appear a lot calmer than previous years. So what are you seeing on the ground?
Yeah, I think Malaysians actually, we as a group, we continue to learn, we continue to grow, and I'm glad you pointed out that it does feel calmer than previous cycles. And I just want to answer this question in two angles. So when you look at the traders, I think the traders, traders move with short-term market volatility. So they've also reacted to the liquidations. They've also done their trades according to the market, and that's why you see our you see our Malaysian prices in line with the rest of the crypto markets. However, if you look at the investors, the long-term investors, I think there's a bit more of a wait and see approach. So, we're still seeing a huge amount of Malaysians continuing to hold their crypto assets. Not everyone selling in a panic, etc. So, I think that's also a bit of a wait and see approach. And I think we have lots and lots of long-term believers in the digital asset space.
But on the other hand, many investors assumed that with the US ending quantitative tightening, we'd see some support for risk assets, including crypto. Yet the opposite happened, and the market sold off instead. So why didn't the end of QT translate into improved liquidity for crypto? Is this simply a timing issue, or does it signal that crypto is still trading like a short-term macro-sensitive risk asset rather than a long-term hedge?
I think it's perhaps more of the former at the moment. So, we mentioned earlier that there are long-term believers, there are long-term investors and so on. But in the short term, price is often driven by traders, hedge funds, people who are moving into the markets in and out quickly. And I think historically, we've also seen that quantitative tightening, it doesn't mean that, it doesn't mean that's new liquidity into the system, right? It just means that that's a slowdown, or rather an end of liquidity tightening. So it doesn't mean that this immediately leads to rallies. And if you think about it also, markets tend to be forward-looking. So a lot of this has already been priced in by the previously mentioned traders.
That's on short term, but for long-term investors that watching this, a 20 to 30% swing in Bitcoin can feel quite dramatic. But historically, this has happened multiple times, even during bull markets. So from your perspective, should this move be seen as normal cycle volatility, or is there anything in this correction that you consider a genuine red flag?
I don't see anything in this cycle as a genuine red flag. I think we've previously mentioned that there are a couple of very, very I would say tailwinds for macroeconomic factors. Some of that we mentioned earlier, the move towards alternative assets and so on. And as you rightly pointed out, also historically we've seen 30%, 40%. In the early days we see even greater pullbacks happening in every bull market. And I think that there's this quote that I like, which is volatility is often the price of performance. So people who are investing, obviously we want the upside, but we also need to recognize that upside tends to come with downside. So an asset that can move very quickly upwards can also swing downwards. Now, I just want to point out also that this current cycle has been quite different, because there are a huge bunch of indicators that people are looking at now in terms of market top signals. So for example, one signal that's very, very widely quoted in the US is if Coinbase, one of the top investment apps there, if that becomes number one in the App Store, then that's one of the market signals, for example. Now, in this market cycle, we never saw many of this market top indicators hitting. The market never went into euphoria mode, so it's actually very hard to say that the market top has been hit.
And looking ahead now, the next 3 to 6 months come with a lot of moving parts, geopolitical uncertainty, shifting liquidity conditions, ETF flows, and minor economics. So given all these factors, what is your base case scenario for Bitcoin and the broader crypto market in the near term? Are we in for a consolidation phase, a deeper correction, or potential recovery once the market rebuilds momentum?
Yeah, definitely always a tough one to predict the future, Nabilah. And I think definitely as a crypto exchange also, we do not take positions on like what's the next expectations and so on. But I do want to quote some of the one of the very, very astute market observers. So Jeff Kendrick is the head of digital assets at Standard Chartered. He came out yesterday saying that he suggested that the market perhaps has bottomed, and his base case is that a year-end rally is still on the cards. I think some of the factors that we've mentioned earlier, a lot of excess leverage has been flushed out, macroeconomic factors, continuing to provide tailwinds and so on. Of course, over the longer term, I am a very optimistic person, and I definitely believe in the future of digital assets. And, I think that is true for many of us here in Malaysia as well.
Finally, Aaron, for everyday Malaysian investors who may be feeling a little unsure after the recent swings, what's the single most important message you want them to take away from this cycle, please?
Definitely, I would view investing into digital assets as a part of your portfolio. So, I think this view always helps people understand that, the amount of risk that you take in your portfolio, that needs to be commensurate with your risk appetite and your overall portfolio. That also, if you were to invest into digital assets at a level which is comfortable with your risk appetite and so on, then I think that helps take away a lot of the worries. For example, if somebody was over-invested or investing based on leverage, then somebody might be very, very concerned, very, very worried about the price swings. But somebody who's investing according to their risk appetite, according to an allocation that's suitable for them, I think they would be able to sleep better and be able to ride out the volatility here.
Wait, Aaron, if I may add one more question, what's your outlook for Bitcoin's market in the first quarter of next year, 2026?
Yeah, again, it's quite tough to mention a specific price target, but I think the overall sentiment, one of the alternative views in the market right now, apart from so there's a little bit of a pessimistic view, I would say. Some of the observers have said, okay, this is the end of the 4-year cycle, let's sell, let's move to more stable coins, for example, or move into gold or other assets. But I think the alternate view over the next, say, 6 months or 9 months, which is in Q1, Q2 next year, is that there's still so many macroeconomic factors that are providing tailwinds to digital assets. For example, we hear about institutionalization of digital assets, tokenization of real-world assets, and we see this all over the world, right? It's not just overseas, but also in Malaysia. We're starting to see, for example, Bank Negara, Securities Commission, all come up with their sandboxes for digital assets, potentially even stable coins and so on. So again, the price may move up and down and so on. It's very, very hard to predict. But I think the overall landscape for digital assets is so much better, so much more promised than it was just maybe even 2 years ago.
All right, that was Aaron Tang with the latest on the current state of crypto. Aaron, always great insights and context. Thank you for helping us understand what's driving the crypto markets at this moment. And to our viewers, volatility in crypto is not new, but understanding the forces behind is key to navigating the space responsibly. So thank you so much again, Aaron. And that's all for today's Niaga Awani. I'm Nabilah Khaleeda. Thank you so much for watching.
Kementerian Pendidikan bertanggungjawab sepenuhnya terhadap keselamatan murid dan pelajar